Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Well, welcome back, everybody. Okay, let me see here. I've got a ton of stuff to go over. I've got some audio I want to play as well, a number of education stories to run through too. And I want to really kick off with this. And you've heard me mention this before, but based on the last episode with the conversation with my aunt regarding the church environment during COVID, certainly within her church, there were a couple of questions that I had after I was recording, and I ended up getting answered by her. One of them, of course, had to do with the finances and the amount of money that the church was raising and the donations that were coming in and things of that nature. Because I remember, again, I attended one of her services once, and I took a lot of notes, and I sort of just watched it from sort of a scientific standpoint, just making observations and writing things down. And I had a bunch of questions and whatever else. But one of the things, of course, that always fascinates me are the number of individuals that just go along. They'll just go along with particular things. And then, of course, when I attended one of her services, there was a lot of mention, and I mean a lot of mention of making donations. They needed a new stereo system. They needed a new this, a new that. They were trying to get a new roof. Again, this was a number of years ago. I want to say maybe 9 years ago, if memory serves. But either way, I ended up asking her a question about the finances, and she said during the COVID pandemic nonsense, she said all of the donations dried up. People weren't donating money anymore. Everybody was sort of taking care of themselves and doing their own thing. And then it sort of hit me like a freight train. I thought, well, that explains it then. That explains the entire marketing scheme behind the Reawaken America tour with the Clay Clarks and the Mike Flynns and all of these other individuals. They clearly saw an opportunity that if you had a large group of people who weren't attending their churches anymore, that those people had money and that money had to go somewhere. So why not put together a tour? Again, it's theoretically a big church tour. So why not put together a big church tour in order to siphon that money that would normally go to, say, their own church? Instead, it'll go to the Church of the Reawaken America tour. And we also know that many of those speaking engagements in those tours were hitting giant event centers and even larger churches that could house a lot of people as opposed to smaller churches. But my point with that is this. I've called them grifters before, and I still strongly believe that they are. There's no doubt in my mind. These individuals will throw anybody under the bus if a particular individual wants them thrown under the bus who has money to donate. And we also know, again, based on that entire scheme, that there's no way that it was an accident. Putting together that tour was done under the guise of telling the truth to a number of people and bringing the message, and we will pray and we will read some scripture and we will do this and we will do that. We will also have some medical facts rather that are shared with people, but at the exact same time, money was the major motivator there. I'm certain of it. There's no way that they weren't engaging in a well-directed and well-thought-out marketing campaign in order to take money from people who, again, would normally give to their own church if they chose to do so, but would instead donate to something like this. It filled a gap, is my ultimate point. It just filled a gap, and they knew exactly what they were doing, and they continue to still do it. And I'm not defending what the church did by any stretch. They're clearly an abomination, and what many of them were doing, in particular the ones that went along with all of this, they've killed their congregation. They've wiped them out because now they're jabbed. They're still wearing masks. Probably they're sick. They don't know why, and they were just blindly following along. The problem is the Reawaken America tour and tours like that were doing the same kinds of things, just on the opposite end of the spectrum, so to speak, but they were still siphoning out all of that money from these individuals who clearly had it to give. And I think that's disgusting. So That's my 2 cents on it. Again, we've watched those individuals throw a number of good people under the bus, and if you've watched any of the Watch the Water documentaries, in particular the last one, Closing Chapter with, again, Dr. Brian Ardis, he very specifically states that when he was on the Reawaken America tour, he would get on stage and everybody would just kind of run away. All the other individuals, again, would not talk to him, and they wouldn't want to be a part of him. So they're all sort of profiting from being on the stage, but at the exact same time, the division that exists within is astounding. Because again, if these individuals were real scientists, and these individuals, again, like the Steve Kirsches of the world and the Peter McCulloughs, what these individuals would be doing is taking everything into consideration, all scenarios, all possible options. And unfortunately, that's not happening. So I just wanted to mention that again, not to get off on the jabs right away, but I wanted to mention again just the entire money aspect of the Reawaken America tour and how they just snuck right in to a very specific demographic, and they knew exactly what that demographic was. They said to themselves, "We have again these church-going individuals who have fat wallets, and they want the socialization and the big environment, and they want to hear the good news, and they want to hear the truth." And we can bring all of that to them. What we can also do is siphon money out of them into us, and we can profit off of this also. And they did. Sold tickets, private donations, very specific donations, set up a donation tent. People line up, just toss out their money so that they can keep going on this Reawaken America tour thing, and everybody feels good about themselves for having donated. I'm telling you. They knew what they were doing. That's my overall point. They knew what they were doing. It was purposeful. I'm not saying that some good things weren't said, but I just find it disgusting, frankly. I think that if the motives are money, then they're doing it for the wrong reason, and I'm certain the motives were certainly money, because they keep the train rolling there. They keep that Reawaken America tour continuing, much like Simone Gold. Same kind of thing, very irrelevant, says the most obvious things on Gab that you could possibly imagine, and yet she's still trying to siphon money out of people. It really is disgusting. So, there you go. That's my 2 cents on that. Here's the next thing, and this is just kind of a brief little thing, although remarkably important, kind of jab related too, I suppose. Certainly depopulation agenda. I think that's putting it mildly. The other day, on Memorial Day, I'm lying outside, and I'm lying on my back, and I've got my polarized sunglasses on, and it's a crystal clear blue sky. No clouds in the sky, no chemtrails, nothing. It was great. I love when the sky is that blue and not hazy and gross from, chemtrails and God knows what else. Either way, I'm lying on my back, and a huge chemtrail goes over, and it's the only one in the sky, and it's undeniable. It's got those offshoot bubbles that shoot out of one side. Everybody, if you pay attention to the chemtrails, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So it was flying low, and it was shooting out at least 4 hoses out of the back of this plane, and it was a big bastard. And again, it was flying low, and it was undeniable, and it was sticking in the air for quite some time. But about an hour passed, and I was looking up toward the direction of the sun, and I simply took my hand and I covered the sun with my left hand, and I was looking again toward the sun because that's where the chemtrail went right through, at least based on my angle. And honest to God, I could see as high as where the chemtrail was, this massive haze of these particles coming out of the sky, clearly coming from the chemtrail. Now again, people would probably, and I took footage of this, which by the way is on my Gab page, and I'm going to put it in the next war video too, but you can clearly see these fiber materials falling directly from the sky and just moving its way through the air. Some of the pieces are larger, and it almost looks like it's dandelion, like dandelion seeds, but then some of it are these wiry little fibers. And I'm telling you, it's not an exaggeration when I say this. It was coating the sky, and you could physically see it falling out of the sky. But you could see it clearer if you had polarized glasses on and your hand was over top of the sun and you were looking in that general direction. It was just this white, I don't know. I mean, again, you can see it in the footage that I took with my cell phone, and in the footage itself, I used the gutter to kind of block out the sun, and then I zoomed in a few times so that you could see exactly what it was. But I've seen documentaries again where smaller planes will gather up particles from the sky from behind a chemtrail plane, and then they'll test it and see what's in it. And it's all kinds of terrible stuff. So, my overall point is I don't think by any stretch that, and I know this has been written about by Alana Freeland in her books at great length as well. And I've read those, but she clearly states they're not going to necessarily need vaccines, so to speak, in order to infect us with these nanoparticles. They can drop them from the air and just have us breathe them in. There's no doubt about it. And I'm telling you, it didn't look like anything you wanted to breathe in because these things were weird looking. And again, some of them were silver and shiny. Some of them were small and white. Some of them were bigger and white, but it was just this general haze. So, a bit of a homework project if you're curious. The next time a chemtrail goes over top of wherever you live or wherever you are, put on a pair of polarized sunglasses. Wait about an hour. Stick your hand up over the sun to block out the sun and look around the sun and around your hand, and I guarantee you'll start to see these particles in the air. This can't be good. I mean, none of this is a good thing, but it's beyond awful. And yeah, again, anybody can just walk around and breathe this stuff in. So, I don't know. It was terrible, but either way, that footage is on my Gab page, and I'll put it in the next war video on BitChute and Rumble also. All right, let me get into some education-related things here, and there's a number of stuff. Again, you would think that the closing of the school year would sort of put a rest to a lot of the education news, and if you've listened to this show long enough, you know that that's not true. Unfortunately, the corrupt bus of education continues to drive right through the hearts and minds of just about everybody. So, first of all, I watched this commencement address by Tom Hanks, the actor, pseudo-pedophile or alleged pedophile, actual pedophile, not sure. He's certainly been tied to a lot of horrible things. Either way, he gave the commencement address at Harvard. And I have to tell you, it was not good, as you might expect, but it was, I would say there was a lot of subliminal messaging taking place, and it was rather confusing, and perhaps even confusing to some people in the crowd. Overall, and anybody can go and watch it if you're interested, but essentially what he did is he claimed that we are all Americans, no matter no matter where you come from. That if you are here, you're an American. That's essentially it. That was basically his speech. He was making comparisons to comic book characters and truth, justice, in the American way and the Marvel universe and all that crap. And he was bringing all of that up. Again, sort of under the overall arching point of if you are here, you're an American. Well, that's not true. There are lots of illegals who are here, they're not Americans, and they don't belong. That's a fact. He was also, of course, making the constant comparisons with all of the gay stuff and all of the degenerate behavior and everything else. That again, if you are here, regardless of what you believe in and regardless of what you stand for, you're an American, and that's something that we should all support. Incorrect, Mr. Hanks, incorrect. But that was, again, the basis of his entire commencement address. I thought it was gross. I understood what he was saying. I didn't like it. And, there were also some things, again, where a hard leftist would probably listen to what he was saying and even sort of misinterpret some of the things that he was saying and disagree with it. But overall, it was not good. Because, again, these commencement addresses tend not to be. They tend to be rather radical, and if they aren't, then they are subliminal, and they're doing whatever they can to sort of hide their overall perverse message. And as far as Tom Hanks is concerned, it is that if you are here, you're an American, and that's something that everybody should support no matter what. Sorry. I couldn't disagree more. Last week, there was also this, and I wanted to mention this. I downloaded this PDF. This is disturbing also. And this comes again directly from the White House, quote unquote, from Joe Biden's administration. He, of course, didn't type this up because, well, let's face it, he can't even turn on a computer. But he certainly signed off on it. And he would because, again, he's blackmailed. He did murder his first wife, after all, or have her killed, along with at least, I think, their first daughter. Anyway, side note, this document is titled The U.S. National Strategy to Counter Anti-Semitism. And as you would expect, they have an entire section here on education. And Cicely brought this to my attention, specifically the education piece. And it's disturbing. So I'm not going to read the intro 2-page letter that he writes or doesn't write and then ultimately signed. But this right here, again, ladies and gentlemen, it is filled with lies. It is constant propaganda, playing the victim constantly. And again, as the old saying goes, if you want to know who rules over you, find out who you're not allowed to criticize. Well, that's certainly the case here. So on page 13, under the first pillar, which is titled Increase Awareness and Understanding of Anti-Semitism, including its threat to America, and broaden appreciation of Jewish American heritage. There's Strategic Goal 1.1, Strategic Goal 1.2, and then Strategic Goal 1.3. 1.1 is school-based education. 1.2 is outside of the classroom. And 1.3 is research. I want to read the school-based education and outside of the classroom stuff. Because again, you got to understand that they're not going to quit. There's just going to be more Steven Spielberg movies being shown in schools. There's going to be 1,000 other ridiculous things being described in schools. And all it will take to put an end to all of this will be one American K-12 school student doing a project on Europa: The Last Battle, playing portions of that in a classroom setting, and this entire narrative gets destroyed. Because again, when it comes to any issue, there's no such thing as a singular side. You have to look at everything. And I'll tell you what, before I read this, I just want to make mention of this. This is one of those really sort of bigger points, I think, that I've heard a lot of people make, and I wish that more people would certainly get into it. Because again, the answer is remarkably simple. And as you've heard me reference Occam's razor on a constant basis, the real answer lies in the explanation that provides the least amount of assumptions. When someone says, who is behind all of this degeneracy? Who is behind all of this perversion and mutilation and murder and deception and division and all of it? Who is behind all of that? The singular answer is the devil. It's that simple. It's the devil. Then if you go below the devil, him, of course, being toward the top of all of this horrific decision-making, below him, you have everybody who worships the devil and does what the devil wants. And then below them, you have, of course, the useless eaters and the people who have no idea that the devil is actually in charge and that they are being led around by people who worship the devil. And so on and so on and so on, right down through every single issue, and then it lands in the lap of an innocent child in a classroom setting. Because keep in mind, the devil's target is always children, no matter what the subject. The devil is always trying to get children, because if you get the child, then you have them and own them as an adult. So, back into this document. Pillar 1, increase awareness and understanding of anti-Semitism, including its threat to America, and broaden appreciation of Jewish American heritage. I'm going to get down to the first goal here, the Strategic Goal 1.1, which is increase school-based education about anti-Semitism, including the Holocaust and Jewish American heritage. Here's what it says, quote, again, it's lies. The entire thing is a lie. It says, quote, in 2020, the first 50-state survey on Holocaust knowledge among millennials and Gen Z found that most Americans lack basic knowledge of the Holocaust. For example, 63% of survey respondents did not know that 6 million Jews were murdered in the Holocaust. Nearly 60% did not know what the concentration camp Auschwitz was, and 11% believed that Jews caused the Holocaust. It's just, the entire first sentence is a lie. All of it's a lie. It continues. It says, we need Holocaust education in schools to correct this lack of knowledge and help ensure the future generations learn about anti-Semitism and the history of the Holocaust, including how and why it happened. Holocaust education should make clear that anti-Semitism was the basis of Hitler's persecution of Jews. Unquote. Now, I'm going to continue with that for a minute, but first, let me just run through this. And I put this meme up on Gab too. It's been in the war videos. This right here is your only history lesson that you'll need. Okay? The word usage regarding all of this anti-Semitism and all these isms and ists and all of these words were created by communist Jews. This is a fact. So you've heard me mention Conrad Hayden before. Conrad Hayden was the one who created the term Nazi. It means Ignatz. The National Socialist DAP party did not call themselves Nazis. No one in Germany called themselves a Nazi. Again, it was a derogatory term. It was not a good word. They were making fun of them. And of course, he was in the media. And yes, he was a Marxist and he happened to be Jewish. So there's that. The term anti-Semitic or anti-Semitism, it too is a derogatory term that was invented by, again, a hard left-wing Jewish individual by the name of Moritz Steinscheider. If I'm saying that right, probably not. But look him up. He created it out of thin air. He simply created it out of thin air, and yes, he was in the media too. He was in the printing business and newspapers, etc., etc. And then, of course, the people who worked around him, much later on, after he died, continued to popularize the phrase, as if to say, if you make fun of anybody who happens to be Jewish, or you even criticize them, it's not even making fun of them. If you criticize them or you deny anything that they agree with, if you think that something that they do is remarkably immoral or historically inaccurate or whatever it is, well, then you're going to be labeled an anti-Semitic. This is a problem. These words are created and then weaponized in the defense of very evil people. The next term, racist. This was created by Leon Trotsky. Happened to be a communist, happened to be a Jew. There you go. The next term, sexism. This too was created by Margaret Feldman. Again, a feminist. Feminism, another term that was created again by Marxists who happen to be Jewish. You see, this right here is the problem, but this right here is real education. What I just explained to you and those people, that's real education, not the Steven Spielberg version of what they want you to believe. That's all propaganda, and it's evil propaganda because it's not true. So I'm going to continue with this document, again, because that first paragraph is loaded with lies. Why? Simple. Who put this document together? It wasn't Joe Biden. Like I said, he can't tie his own shoes. So this was probably created by the ADL and a number of other organizations, again, that are interested in continuing their infiltration of the American K-12 school system to warp the minds of children. Why? Because that's what the devil wants. That's the point. It continues here. It says, quote, 24 states have Holocaust education mandates, and the majority of states also include Holocaust education as part of their state teaching standards. By congressional mandate, states and localities set and implement these standards, but the federal government can play a supporting role. I'm going to stop it there real quick. This is funny because you even heard under oath Miguel Cardona, the education secretary, say that the Department of Education doesn't engage in politics. Well, he's a pathological liar. That's not true either. You see all the lying taking place here? This is your enemy. It can't get clearer. It's disgusting and it's overwhelming. This is why you have to leave the system. They will lie to you and your children for your whole lives until you figure it out. It continues, quote, "The federal government recently supported such education by enacting the Never Again Education Act that authorizes the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum to develop and nationally disseminate accurate, relevant, and accessible resources to promote understanding about how and why the Holocaust happened. Such Holocaust education should include, for example, instruction on the roles of Nazi racial anti-Semitism, long-standing European anti-Semitism, conspiracy theories, and the propaganda during the Holocaust, not just the fact of what happened during the 1930s and 40s that resulted in the systematic murder of European Jews. It should also include the experience of Jews living in North Africa during the Holocaust." It continues, unfortunately. It says, "Both anti-Semitism and Holocaust education specifically can also teach students about hate, bigotry, racism, and prejudice more broadly." It says, "When conducted effectively," that's funny, "Holocaust education provides enduring lessons for all communities and encourages students to think critically about their own roles and responsibilities to stand up against hate." Unless you're a white person, of course. You can't defend yourself then. "This education enables students to understand what can happen in a democratic society when hatred goes unchecked, when people are silent as their neighbors are marginalized and murdered." That's right. You can't criticize anybody who's black, who lives in the inner city and walks around with a gun constantly shooting it in the air for the purposes of attention or a TikTok video or any, you certainly can't do any of that, because then again you're a racist. See who controls all of these terms? It says, "A compilation of efforts nationwide will help states and non-governmental organizations improve and increase teaching about the Holocaust and anti-Semitism, as well as other forms of hate, bigotry, and genocide. In addition to learning about the horrors of the Holocaust, students should learn about global histories of anti-Semitism. This should include histories of anti-Semitism experienced by Sephardic and Mizrahi Jews, if I'm saying that right, probably not, don't care, who trace their ancestry to Spain, the Middle East, and North Africa, and their stories of exclusion, persecution, and expulsion. Students should also learn about the history of anti-Semitism in the United States, as well as contemporary manifestations of anti-Semitism." Let me go back to that real quick. You're right, we should learn, and students should learn about why many individuals who happen to be Jewish were excluded, persecuted, and expelled. Why would that be the case? Why is it that they would be kicked out of over 100 plus countries over the course of centuries? Why would that happen? Educators need readily available quality resources to enable such education. Yes. More copies of Schindler's List in everybody's classroom, please. A work of fiction, by the way. Additionally, more education on Jewish American history and the valuable role that Jews have played in our nation's story is needed. This focus on the positive contributions Jews have made will further help to inoculate young people against anti-Semitism stereotypes, tropes, and conspiracy theories. They use the word inoculate. Seriously. Honestly, this is crazy. We need to inoculate them from learning about the truth. Don't pay attention to any theories or stereotypes. No. It says the administration applauds the many states, cities, teachers, schools, education centers, and museums, and supporting communities that have made great strides in increasing the quantity and quality of such educational efforts, and encourages more progress in this area. My God. Here we go. Well, never mind. I'm not going to read through that. There's this giant blue section of all of the strides that they've made and all of the things that they will do. It's also, I might add, a giant money laundering operation. It's big business, the fake Holocaust. throwing around the word anti-Semitism. Real big business, lots of money laundering. It's awful. Calls on Congress, the whole of society call to action. And they basically are just telling people what they want them to do. Here's the last paragraph. This is the raise awareness about anti-Semitism and Jewish American heritage outside of the classroom and increase workplace training on countering anti-Semitism. There you go. Right into the workplace. It says, quote, beyond formal educational settings, government and civil society must increase understanding and raise awareness about anti-Semitism, reaching Americans wherever they are. It is essential to engage people in their communities and through trusted networks and interlocutors to help them identify and learn about anti-Semitism. To educate the public about both anti-Semitism and Jewish American heritage, we need programming in museums. They use the word programming. We need programming in museums, libraries, and art and culture institutions, as well as dedicated efforts by public figures, community leaders, and media outlets. They need propaganda, is what they're saying. Constant propaganda, grinded into their brains. Given their audiences, traditional and social media organizations have a special responsibility to provide credible and accurate information and to educate the public about targeted hate and what drives it. Whenever possible, media outlets and content creators should ensure that materials about Jews address the religious denominational diversity and range of identities and experiences within the Jewish American community. In the workplace, through education and training on anti-Semitism, yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, they're talking about school-based professional development. If it doesn't already exist, it's coming. So again, it said in the workplace, through education and training on anti-Semitism and other forms of discrimination, managers and employees, will be better equipped to recognize and respond to incidents of discrimination and harassment and develop more inclusive and equitable workplaces. Training on anti-Semitism can help employees specifically identify when a coworker is exhibiting anti-Semitic beliefs and support employers in responding to anti-Semitic incidents at work, unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Bolshevism. That's what that means. It means that if you're caught saying anything online that someone at work disagrees with, they're going to run right to HR and they're going to come after you. That's what it means. Most people within the work environment leave each other alone. Everybody knows that. This isn't really weaponized in order to defend someone who happens to be a hard left-wing individual who may or may not be Jewish. That's not really it. It's used to be a weapon against innocent parties at the hands of individuals who feel like, not actually are, but feel like they're being made fun of or discriminated against or harassed or whatever it may be. I saw a post online, they'll say, that was remarkably offensive to me, and I don't know for a fact, but I think it came from this person over here in our work environment. Go investigate them. And then their entire life is turned upside down based on a lie. And then what recourse do they have if they're found that there was no wrongdoing? They have no recourse. This already exists at the university level. Any student can turn on any student at any time about anything. Any student can turn on any professor or college or university employee about anything. The same thing can happen at the K-12 level, and it does. Students will hear a teacher in a classroom teaching the truth about a subject for which the student knows nothing about, and yet they feel like what the teacher is saying is a lie or offensive, and then they take it to somebody else higher up the food chain, so to speak, and then that teacher is guilty before proven innocent. And no one wants to really learn the truth. The teacher is ultimately just told, don't ever bring up this subject ever again, even if what they were bringing up is factually and historically accurate. This is Bolshevism. My God. The weaponization of children toward adults is a Bolshevik tactic. I've railed on it time and time again. You know that. It's a fact. It's what Stalin did. It's what Trotsky liked. It's what Lenin was involved in. They were all in on it. And they all have a lot of things in common, don't they? But then again, it goes through some executive branch actions within this document that have already taken place and what they want to take place. All these organizations are distributing all of this material, and they're doing it this year, ladies and gentlemen. This is happening this year. November of 2023, for example, the Office of Personnel Management, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and the White House Office of Management and Budget is going to have learning sessions and paperwork and forms to fill out and education and re-education programs. So is the Department of Labor, AmeriCorps, the Department of Veterans Affairs, federal agencies, the National Endowment for the Arts, the President's Committee on Arts and Humanities, the Department of the Interior, IMLS, which is I don't know what that stands for. It's not saying. And then the Small Business Administration, along with the VA, the DOI, and the Department of Agriculture. They're panicking. That's what this means. They're absolutely panicking. They know that they are the problem. They know that they are the ones who are perpetuating a lot of this. They know that they were behind 9/11, the Liberty attack, all of it. They know that they were behind all of this. And now they're doing whatever they have to do to pressure as many people as they have to pressure within Washington and all of these other agencies in order to get through their ideologies and their inoculation programs, in order to brainwash everybody right down to the classroom student. They know what they're doing, and what they're doing is satanic. It's that simple. Okay, moving on. Speaking of Satanism, speaking of schools, who do you think is behind something like this? And again, I put this on Gab last week. I thought I was reading a joke. I thought this was from the Babylon Bee at first. It's not. This comes from the Vancouver Sun, old Vancouver, Canada. And it says, quote, safer snorting kids, quote unquote, handed out at British Columbia High School after drug presentation. A kit includes straws and wallet-sized cards for cutting powdered drugs into snortable lines, as well as a booklet on staying safe while snorting and when you're snorting. It says the British Columbia School District is investigating after a guest speaker appears to have ended their presentation by handing out safer snorting kits to assembled teenagers. Quote, have condoms and lube with you, it says. You may want to have sex while high, quote unquote, reads one tip. Another advises the drug users to decorate their snorting equipment, quote unquote. Adding a personal touch to your snorting equipment will help you better recognize your own when using with others, it reads. The booklet also notes a wide variety of drugs that can be consumed via snorting, from cocaine to crystal meth and even fentanyl and ketamine. Quote, you may be new to snorting drugs or have snorted drugs for many years. Either way, this resource has something for you, unquote, reads the introduction. The kit's distribution to minors was first brought to light by conservative commentator Aaron Gunn in a Saturday tweet that has since garnered more than 600,000 views. Gunn included images of the kit, saying that it had been handed out at a high school in Cowichan, if I'm saying that right, probably not, the Cowichan Valley, a region just north of the provincial capital of Victoria. Quote, today in British Columbia, they are handing out safer snorting kits to children as young as 15, he wrote. And it goes on and on and on. Who do you think's behind that? Who do you think is funding that? It can't get clearer. These dots are so close together, they're on top of one another. It's awful. But here's a sign of the good times. Here's good news. And I actually mean that. This is from the Daily Mail. It is titled, High School Graduates Shun College for Blue-Collar Jobs. It says enrollment declines to 62% as job growth at restaurants, theme parks, and other hospitality sectors soars. It says about 62% of American high school graduates age 16 to 24 enrolled in four-year college programs. The unemployment rate for 16 to 18-year-olds in April of this year was 9.2%. Various blue-collar majors saw increases at two-year programs this spring. They're doing it differently now, which is a good thing. They're thinking about things differently. Again, the cost of everything is through the roof, as everyone knows, but people don't want to play the college games anymore. It's not popular. The so-called thrill is gone. It's just gone. It doesn't exist there. There's so much criticism about the failure of these degrees and what these degrees actually lead to. And again, if conservatives make up the vast majority of the population, which we know that they do, why on earth would they want to willfully enter a hard left-wing Bolshevik environment that isn't going to teach them the truth, isn't going to give them the ability to engage in all of their rights that they have, like freedom of speech? There's just nothing attractive about it. So thank God for them. Go your own way. Forge your own path. I love it. I absolutely love it. Here's another one. This is odd. This was tossed me by a listener of the show also. This is from American Thinker just last week also, and it is titled, New York Governor Hochul Floats Idea of Housing Illegals in Dorms at State Universities. The writing was on the wall for this. The writing was on the wall. You've got endless sick, jabbed, dead and dying students. We know that the college enrollment has dramatically declined, and who is, of course, coming in to live in these areas? Illegals, 100%. They got to put them someplace, and they've got plenty of room, and if you can't do it in a hotel, why not an empty dorm room building? Move the students over here, put the illegals right in here. It's disgusting, and this is going to continue, in particular, again, in the hard left-wing states. It says Governor Hochul's administration has identified dorms on 3 SUNY campuses to use as housing sites for migrants, according to a source. The source told NY1, the plan includes a total of 1,500 beds at the University of Buffalo, Stony Brook University, and the University at Albany. An announcement is expected as soon as this week, which would be this week, the source said. So what are you going to have next on those college campuses, college and university campuses? What could possibly come next? How about rape? How about murder? How about theft? How about free tuition? How about free tuition to illegals? Come on in. Because again, they don't have the students that they once had, which means these institutions aren't getting the money that they once had. Which means what's happening to those institutions? Well, they're in a financial crunch. And as a result of that, they need more people. It won't matter that they can't speak English. It won't matter that they can't read or write English. That's not going to be a prerequisite anymore. Because again, on top of that, we're already seeing all of those prerequisites be destroyed and eliminated. Again, this is part of the Bolshevik plight here that people really don't understand. And that the individuals who work within these actual environments have no clue what they're actually supporting. You've heard me say it a million times. This is the plan. This is part of the Bolshevik plan, and it always has been. This is the Marxist direction. They want these individuals to support their own destruction without them even knowing it. And they're doing it. They're actually doing it. And they don't even see it. In fact, here's another avenue. This is a completely different avenue. It's education related, and it's one I've brought up before, but it's one that I've noticed pop up because I get these emails all the time. There's a conference here in the area which usually meets in Cincinnati, and they are the Midwestern Educational Research Association. This particular conference meets again every year, usually in the fall, and it's in the springtime when they start to accept their proposals, and then they send out their acceptance letters for presentations and research and whatever else. We know that their entire research agenda at the higher education level is completely degenerate. Everybody's a racist. We need to accept all illegals no matter what, and white people are the problem. I mean, we get it. That's their agenda time and time again, and these people actually believe that what they're creating is new, when in fact there isn't anything that they can create that's new. That doesn't exist anymore. Anything that is being proposed or brought to the attention of anyone today is something that is already common knowledge and has certainly existed centuries before now. So it's not new. Their degenerate behaviors just get recycled and then they push it out there like it's some new research plan. But the Midwestern Educational Research Association, ladies and gentlemen, continues to push back their call for proposals because no one's sending anything in. That's number one. The other reason that they typically push back their call for proposals is because all of the presentations are generally the same. Now, again, what subjects would they all generally be talking about? All white people are bad, racism, 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 LGBTQXYZ is the way to go, this is the future of America, this is the future of education, and we have to follow, quote unquote. If all of the presentation titles are about the same kind of degenerate crap, even these degenerate organizations have to say, wait a minute. We have to mix this up a little bit. We just have to mix this up. We can't possibly have an entire conference that's all about gay stuff or hating on white people and how everybody needs to love illegal immigrants or foreign invaders, which is really what they are. They eventually have to put their foot down and say, we can't do this. So they push back the proposals in an effort to try to get at least a few people to propose something that has nothing to do with any of that. And that's getting harder and harder to do because all of these institutions are all in this together. We're all in this together. That's why all of the presentations look exactly the same. They have the similar titles, the similar conclusions, all of it. It's disgusting. Not to mention, if someone like me were to propose something, a presentation to give at this conference, there's no way it would get accepted. It would be titled something like, well, any variation of this, but The Fall of American Education. How Bolshevism, the pharmaceutical industry, and perversion working together are destroying American children, young adults, and the profession as a whole. If you had a presentation like that, and again, I could certainly give that presentation. I'm sure you could too. Nice PowerPoint presentation, maybe some vocabulary words with definitions and some actual video. There's no way in hell people would accept that particular presentation for that conference. Not a chance. If they did, I'll tell you what, the room would have people in it because they would be so curious as to what this right-wing extremist and white supremacist would have to say. Of course, that's what they would label me. And that right there again proves that even a moth can be drawn to the flame. But the point is that there's no way a presentation like that would exist because, again, even though conferences like this are looking for more quote-unquote diverse presentation topics and lines of inquiry, they really aren't. They're just trying to not make every single presentation be something about gay stuff. They want it to be about a variety of different subjects, regardless of how stupid or simple it may be. The importance of iPads in the classroom and reading among kids. I mean, it'll be something like that too. They'll accept something stupid like that because, again, they think that that's important. But the vast majority of everything that they accept is going to have something to do with, again, hiring practices, and we need more diverse hiring practices, and so on and so on. So these conferences are having a hard time finding people also. Again, that was my first point with all of this. They're having a hard time finding people because they're jabbed. They're sick, they're dying, they're dead, and they're jabbed. It's unavoidable, absolutely unavoidable. Let me read this too, kind of a last education story. This was a story that AJ tossed my way from California, and it's disturbing. Has a great deal to do with violence, and one in particular teacher who thrust themselves into this physical altercation actually ended up suffering a miscarriage after being kicked in the stomach by one of the students. So he sent this. It says the following. It says, I thought you might find this article covering a recent middle school incident in Palo Alto involving a violent, disabled quote unquote student and two teachers interesting on so many levels. Not just for the violence and tragedy involved, but the tepid response by the school district, the lack of any punishment against the students, and the attempted cover up. See, right there. All of that is so typical of a school environment, all of it. In particular, again, the death of an unborn child at the hands of a student kicking a female in the stomach. It says a teacher not involved in the incident spoke out at a school board meeting a few weeks later, and this was the first time the incident came to light. It says the student has been transferred to a different middle school in Palo Alto. He wasn't expelled. His disability may be autism, but I'm not sure. They're trying to downplay the violence. Here's the description of the violence from the article. Quote, the incident at JLS School. And it's JL Stanford Middle School. It says, quote, the incident at Jane Lathrop, I'm saying that right, Stanford Middle School campus, occurred the morning of May 5th during a class, according to Palo Alto Police Captain James Reifschneider. Quote, a staff member in her 30s reported a male student struck her in the head with a folding chair and kicked her in the stomach and hip. She reportedly sustained a concussion, a bump on her head and back, and hip pain and other subsequent serious injuries resulting from the attack. A staff member in her 20s reported that the student punched her in the face multiple times and also bit her on the arm. She sustained bruising to her arm and facial pain. According to the student's parents, he sustained swelling, scratches, bruising, and pain to one arm, the captain said. In the sentence above that ends with, quote, other subsequent serious injuries resulting from the attack. That would include a miscarriage. The article did not include the following statement made by the uninvolved teacher to the school board, quote, it's unfortunate that it took a teacher suffering a unimaginable catastrophic loss to get the district's attention about staff and student safety, he said. The unimaginable catastrophic loss referred to by the teacher is the miscarriage suffered by one of the injured teachers who was pregnant. Now, unfortunately, because the child is under 12 years of age, there can't be criminal charges brought against them. I mean, wrap your head around that. That's the state of California right there. That's them in a nutshell. Killed an unborn child of a teacher and isn't going to be charged with anything and isn't being expelled. They've just been moved to their alternative school. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not for the civilized. And when I mean that now, I'm also encompassing the adults who work within. This is not for them either. This is not for the civilized adults. These environments are not for that any longer. They just aren't. If you're even remotely associated with that school district and you continue to work there, you're enabling that behavior. You're enabling it. Not to mention, anybody looking at this school on your resume, in a basic Google search, this will be the thing that pops up. And anybody doing their due diligence would say, oh, so you were at this JS middle school I see on your resume here. Tell us about that school. You would have to bring up the fact that the entire environment was chaos and that an unborn child was killed in the womb of a school teacher at the hands of an under 12-year-old student who wasn't charged with anything. But other than that, everything was fine. My classroom instruction was great and everything was 100% fine. The evidence can't get clearer that image protection is their number one concern. That's the same with criminal organizations. Same thing. I know I'm repetitive on that, but I'm going to continue to be until more people wake up. Because there's just not enough people waking up. There are very good things happening. Again, more and more people are leaving these businesses, and that's excellent. But you have endless people still supporting these lines of work and this degenerate indoctrination and now murder program and murder environments that exist in America that claim to have the safety and well being of students and staff at the forefront of everything that they do. It couldn't be further from the truth. That actually brings me to this. It brings me to a local issue. I watched the last school board meeting in the town where I live, and you've heard me rail on these people before. They are a certain kind of dumb. But in the previous school board meeting, they were bragging about how one of our local representatives at the state level, whose name is Sarah Crothers, anybody can look this woman up. She's been around for a very long time. Of course, she can't be trusted because just because they have an R next to their name doesn't mean they can be trusted. But they were bragging about how Sarah Crothers was going to be making a public school tour of the schools within the county where we live. And of course, the school district here where I live was going to be one of those schools. And she showed up, and it was in the most recent board meeting where they were again bragging about having her around. Keep in mind, all of these school districts around here, for the most part, are becoming insolvent. Many of them are, certainly the one in the town where I live, which is great. I want them to cease to exist. I want cobwebs over the entire building, trees growing on the inside of the building. I want it destroyed. But you have to keep something in mind. Just because the school board are all staunch leftists, and they pretty much are, they're not logical thinkers, these people. But they will go to anybody to beg for support when they are becoming insolvent. And I mean anybody. So just a couple of observations first. They brought her in, and she ended up spending the vast majority of the day, according to the superintendent, longer than she was supposed to be. And they took her to an elementary school, which is one of the newer elementary schools. It's the newest, actually, of the three. And then they took her to the high school. And then they did the whole bootlicking tour again, where they're just like, look at all the great things we do. Look how great our environment is. Look at all of this. But if you've listened to this show and you've heard me talk about this school district, you know that, again, image protection is the number one concern. And yet this school district is always in the evening news for their illegality. Teachers sexually assaulting students. And now, most recently, of course, you have the adopted son, youngest son of a board member, who happens to be gay, and the son happens to be black, threatened to kill 4 kids, 4 girls, within the environment. Hasn't been expelled, is right back in class with everybody else. The ironic part about that, too, is that board member was absent from the last board meeting. Now, why would that be the case? Didn't want to face any accusers? Was he afraid that there would be parents showing up and complaining, which, by the way, no parents showed up and complained about any of that. Not a single one. It was pathetic. But that right there again, when it comes to my overall point is that when it comes to these local representatives, even if they're Republicans, as this woman claims to be, they need the public school system to exist also. They need it to be maintained. They need it to always be there. They don't want it to go away because they're as brainwashed as everybody else who works within the environment and everybody else who is supporting these environments continuing to exist. That continues to be a massive problem. So now they're going to her in order to support an anti-school choice bill. So there's this text message that's bouncing around on people's phones in the area where I live. And it says, quote, it's one of those automated text messages. It says, hey, this is Bethany with Parents Alliance of Ohio. Your representative Sarah Crothers betrayed conservatives when she voted to install leftist teacher union puppet Jason Stevens as the Ohio House Speaker. Capitol insiders report that she plans to betray Ohio parents by killing universal school choice. And then they provide her phone number there for Sarah Crothers to call her to support school choice for all Ohio students. And there's a picture of her with, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris cackling behind her. Representative Sarah Crothers betrayed conservatives, and will Sarah Crothers vote to kill school choice next? She probably will. That's why she's going on these tours, or at least the school district believes that she's going on these tours because she wants to see the public school system continue to exist. Now, It's kind of a multi-dimensional, I don't know. It's strange, but it is a thing that happens in lots of areas. Here's another thing that's taking place and took place within the exact same board meeting. The treasurer, you can't make this up, was given another state award by the Treasurers Association or some group at the state level for being Treasurer of the Year. This is a school district that is becoming insolvent. How is it that in the education business, an individual who receives an award at the state level for Treasurer of the Year receives such a thing when they're going broke? And what was funny is she showed a chart of the finances and the financial projections all the way through like 2025 and 2027. And it clearly shows that they are going to keep spending more money than what they're taking in. Again, these people are on another planet. They're on another planet. They are out to lunch. They have no idea what they're doing. It is beyond embarrassing. They're holding up a stop sign and telling everybody that it's green and it says yield. Look at this yield sign. Isn't this great? And you're going, that's a stop sign and it's red. What the hell's the matter with you? They're going, it's a yield sign. I mean, they're that out to lunch. They're that crazy. But in the same meeting, they also, again, openly stated that at the end of July, again, when the cat's away, the mice play, that at the end of July is when they are going to be proposing their next levy for the November ballot. And it doesn't matter what kind of a levy it is. They'll say, well, this levy isn't going to be taxing anybody new, and no one's going to see their property taxes increase, and that's not going to happen. They'll probably, again, they have at least 3 proposals, and they're going to pick one to put on the ballot. It won't pass because they can't find 3,000 people to vote for it. These places have to cease to exist. They're also firing people, of course. They're firing people and they're not hiring them back. And in typical fashion, a lot of those people are aides. They're individuals who, again, work with other students or are part-time workers or whatever it may be. They're getting rid of all of those individuals, but they're keeping all of the degenerate programs around. And they're certainly keeping the salaries of the degenerate programs and the people who promote those degenerate programs within the school districts, like the DEI, the social emotional learning crap, all of that. That continues to be a thing. There's one audio clip here from that board meeting I want to play, and I found this to be rather interesting because this is, well, it's just multidimensional also. First of all, I'm not going to play this audio, but you had the music teacher of the high school show up. And again, he was begging for everybody to support the music program because we don't want to have to make cuts and we don't want the elimination of music. Okay, whatever. You can learn instruments and learn how to sing anytime, any minute of any day you want. You don't need the school environment to do it. That's number one. But the audio I want to play is from a parent within the district who's advocating for school nurses. Now, again, it seems a bit strange, to me anyway, why, again, in the last board meeting of the school year, with students around and employees still there, et cetera, why would you have a parent show up, or why would a parent show up and advocate for school nurses now? Certainly seems like an interesting time. Yes, we saw school nurses again occasionally show up during the COVID pandemic and please wear your masks and wash your hands and do what you're told. But now you have a parent showing up trying to encourage everybody to support school nurses. To do what? Not eliminate school nurses? Because apparently that's one of the false things that has been proposed, that school nurses might get eliminated if we don't get our levy money. And then that makes everybody panic about what school nurses really do. Well, let's just set the record straight before I play the audio from this parent. School nurses were responsible for engaging in the largest psychological operation that's ever taken place that's caused the deaths of copious amounts of people. Period. If they were licensed and licensed in the right direction in order to administer shots. They were administering flu shots, which were killing people, and COVID shots in their spare time, probably away from the school campus that were also doing the exact same thing. The school nurse's office is arguably one of the most dangerous places you can possibly go as an American K-12 school student or staff member. Stay as far away as humanly possible, because they drank the Kool-Aid too. But my question is again, why now? Why now would you have a parent of 3 children come up to the microphone and advocate for school nurses? Were they told to? Are they drinking the Kool-Aid into believing that the school nurses are going to be eliminated? What's the point of all of this? So give this a listen, ladies and gentlemen, in 3, 2, 1.
Hi, my name is Tamise Ironstrack. I live in the Talawanda district. I have 3 kids that attend schools here, Kramer, the middle school, and the high school. One of them is a big fan of Mr. Marston. He's been a fan of music for a long time. I typed up my comments so that I would stay within my 3 minutes. Good evening. I'm here tonight to give a shout out to the TSD nurses and to dispel any misconceptions about what it is that they actually do every day. Some people may believe that nurses spend their days handing out Band-Aids, and while that is a small part of what they do, it is important for our community to realize that nurses are highly trained medical professionals that work diligently to make the school environment a safe place for students, and in some cases are the only healthcare provider students will see ever. Given these misunderstandings, I would like to use my time tonight to highlight some of the things you may not be aware that students do every day that nurses do every day for Talawanda students. They manage and document immunization requirements and regulations. They address incontinence issues, assess and care for lacerations and abrasions, assess and care for potential breaks and sprains, make puberty presentations and everything that is bundled up with that, perform lice checks, perform bed bug checks, provide body cleanliness education, communicate with and educate parents, manage a plethora of medications for many students, including those with asthma, ADHD, heart conditions that may require CPR in the event of an emergency, students with significant physical disabilities who need to be tube fed, which when done incorrectly can have catastrophic consequences for those children, students with type 1 diabetes who need carbs counted and insulin dosed, as well as minute-to-minute monitoring of their blood sugar levels to prevent life-threatening lows. It's also worth mentioning that while insulin is a life-saving necessary medicine, it also can be deadly when dosed incorrectly. In addition to all of these daily tasks, our nurses are bonding with students, giving them an adult that they can trust and an outlet to depend on when it comes to their care. I cannot understate how important this is for all students, and especially for those who live with chronic illnesses. These kids already have so many obstacles to overcome while they navigate the school system. I can't imagine how much more difficult it will be for them and their families if nurses are removed from Talawanda schools. I implore the board to reconsider the proposed removal of nurses from schools, given the extreme potential consequences of this choice. Imagine, for example, how strange it is for some of us to hear the board spend so much time debating how we can keep sports that will harm children without any discussion of how dangerous removing nurses will be for some students. I realize that these are not the majorities of the students in Talawanda population, but they matter and they deserve a safe school experience just as much as anyone else. Thank you for your time.
It's a scare tactic. That's all. It's just a giant scare tactic. The school board will put it in one of their proposals. They'll put it out among the public. They know that the public gossips, and they'll say, if you don't support our levy, we're going to get rid of school nurses. They can't do that by law. But the dummies soak it in, and they drink it in, and then they pass the rumor mill around, and it goes right through the rumor mill, rather, up and down every single grapevine you could possibly imagine, and then they misinterpret everything, including not paying attention to existing law, where school nurses have to exist. They have to exist in every building. Now, do you need 2 nurses in every building? No. Are there typically 2 nurses in every building? No, there aren't. There's usually just 1. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our sole school nurse. Congratulations. And then that's it. It's just a scare tactic. It's designed to frighten everybody into believing that so-called medical care won't be there for people if they need it. And as you've heard me say, the other thing, of course, that they're consistently trying to do, and this is every school district across the nation, is put defibrillators in school buildings. And many of them already have them, but they're trying to get more. Why would that be the case? Why would you need more defibrillators? I'm thinking. I'm stroking my long beard right now. I'm just kidding, I don't have a beard, but why on earth would They need more defibrillators within school buildings. I think we know. One last jab-related thing before I move into all jab-related stuff here. Physics girl. You've heard me bring her up before. She's still dying. I believe she lives out in California, if memory serves, and her husband is participating in her death. She, of course, is at least triple jabbed, bedridden, and she's drinking food out of a straw. She's not even chewing hard food anymore, and her husband keeps making these occasional videos every other week about what he's doing to help help her recover and this, that, and the other. They're killing her with their lack of knowledge. See, cognitive dissonance is the real pandemic here. Cognitive dissonance is the most deadly thing that exists in this day and age. Individuals that refuse to think about or understand what the truth is. And again, you've heard me say this, and I'm going to keep saying this because this has to be said publicly on a constant basis. These people cannot tell you that they are not brainwashed. That if you look at them and say, you're brainwashed, don't tell me you're not, because here's why you're brainwashed. And then you run down the list of all of the reasons why they're brainwashed, because they believe things that are not real. Someone should reach out to him. I've certainly considered doing it myself, not that he would take it seriously because he's brainwashed. But the husband of this woman, this physics girl gal, her name is Diana or something like that she needs serious medical care, but all of it can be done over the counter without a prescription. And at the end of their most recent video, he says something like she's seeing a specialist to heal herself. She can't. No specialist who comes to her aid is going to be giving her the thing she needs. Glutathione, NAC, ivermectin, nattokinase, hydroxychloroquine, vitamin C, liposomal vitamin C, and vitamin D, and vitamin D3. That's what she needs. She needs spring water, and she needs to sit in a chair staring at the sun. That's what she needs. The spike proteins are paralyzing her body, and she's dying and is not going to survive if they continue to do what they're doing, which is feed her soft food through a straw, cover her eyes, have her wear a mask, be out of the sun, and be bedridden. Her muscles will atrophy, her heart will stop beating, and she will die. The immediate temporary solution to what ails her exists. The long-term prognosis for her is not good, because she's at least triple jabbed, and her body is attacking itself. And this is happening, of course, on a constant basis for endless people. Which leads me to this. I want to play a clip from the most recent episodes of the 5 Docs. They hit a number of issues in this last episode. In fact, when they're all on, it garners more watches and views than when it's just Palevsky and Tenpenny talking, or Palevsky and another of the docs talking. But this had over 13,000 already, with 154 comments on Rumble. There's a section of this, about 28 minutes in, where Tenpenny goes on an excellent run about a number of different things that are happening, and then Carrie Madej gets involved in the conversation, and Lee Merritt, and so on and so forth. It's about, I don't know, maybe 5 or 7 minutes long, give or take. I want you to hear this because it's remarkably valuable, I think. So go ahead and give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
And the mandate thing is interesting. I just heard this today. We had a general office meeting at TIMC today. We do one, I think it's either once a month or once every other month. And we were talking today because Gail, who works for me there, there's several of my many email addresses that she monitors. And she said, I'm getting all of these interesting comments from people saying that their job at where they work, that their bosses are now saying it's okay for them to refuse the COVID shot, but not the flu shot. And I said, well, did you see the new multi-dose flu shot that's coming in? That's got a combination of flu shot, RSV, and COVID. So I'm wondering now if people will, first of all, I'm going to do a piece on that next week. But secondly, if people think they're just getting a flu shot and they're getting this, triple banger at the same time, and I wonder if there will be a flu shot like a regular, normal flu shot? Or are they all going to be manufactured with this RSV, COVID, and influenza together? But I was thinking, isn't that just like nasty? Yes, you can avoid the COVID shot. We will accept your exemption, but we are not going to allow an exemption for flu shots, which, oh, by the way, asterisk footnote has COVID in it, has a COVID shot in it.
I said this from the get-go when they dropped the mandates. I said, my governor, who pretends to be a lot of things and then does something that's really the opposite. But anyway, she's bragging because she got rid of the COVID shot mandate for children, but she didn't get rid of the rest on the panel for school. And see, that's the problem. And they know it. And, this is one big satanic exercise where they know the guys running this, the high adept Satanists and this whole cabal. They believe this. They believe their own stuff, that they won't have karmic debt if they tell you what they're going to do, and so they just do it in language they don't expect you to understand.
And that's movies. That's where Hollywood comes from. It's movies and rap songs, and that entire industry for sure.
Well, and it's telling you that you're getting a flu shot when if you don't look at the label, that's your problem. That's the way they think of us. If you're too stupid to look at the label and to know what's really in there, then we tried. We told you we didn't completely lie. We put it on the label. You had the opportunity to know it and you didn't. So it's not our fault that you die or you get sick. So and I gotta say with the airlines, I'm a little skeptical that by mandating all the pilots to get it, at the end of the day, what's going to happen? You're going to get rid of your older pilots and you're going to have a whole new brand of young pilots, and you're not going to end up paying so much in retirement benefits and all that. I hate to say that, but it looks to me like there's always a dollar.
And they're trying to usher in the drone age as well, as far as they already have a lot of the technology. They want to roll it out very soon, where they will monitor, and I wonder how they can do this, monitor the pilot. And when the pilot, I was told this, has the physical signs of dying, then automatically the controls will switch to only, and they can't reverse it to the AI of the plane. They could, I guess, communicate with a pilot or a teenager on a video game. This has been in the works for a while, and they keep saying they're going to introduce it within the next few years. So in a way, they don't care about the pilots. They claim that soon there will be no human pilot. There'll just be a drone plane that you'll get on, and then maybe you'll have a kid on a video game that can help control it, or just the AI program, which I would never trust. But this is what they're pushing toward. And also, I don't know if you know, like UK, and I forgot the other country, maybe France, said that they are getting rid of their airports that are smaller. They're going to just have a few bigger airports. And that's just because nobody's going to do short distance. It's going to be long distance, meaning, you're going to have a lot of money to fly in the future. It's not going to be available to little people.
Well, the FAA is really wants to have a mid-air collision. According when you talk to Todd Callender and his whole group of people about this, Lee, I know you've been on those loops, that they want an airplane crash, because in that way it goes along with the 15-minute cities and that people can't travel. And what you said is true, Carrie, that in each, particularly like in smaller countries, like say in Europe, that there'll just be one airport in Frankfurt. There won't be any of the regional airports. There'll be one airport like Zurich, one airport instead of Heathrow, and the other one in the UK or in London. You'll just have one, and they will primarily be not for commercial air, like for you and me flying somewhere, but they'll primarily be for cargo. Because this, if they can crash the airline industry, and I've thought about this, I thought, how are they going to make this happen? I mean, how much of the world is run on tourism, and how much? I mean, think about hotels and VRBO and Airbnb and car rentals. Car rental systems and cruise ships and all the hotels that have to do with it, and all the supply chains that come into hotels, including laundry services. I mean, to try to pull this off on this 15-minute city thing and to completely do away with all, that means everything stops. Everything. And everybody's going to be unemployed, and we're going to own nothing and be happy, I guess. I guess that's how it's going to work.
I'll tell you something. Again, you've heard me bring that up before on numerous occasions in the past, that they're going to move the COVID juice over into every single line of shots. You have to be a jab vaccine / shot free individual, family, couple, whatever you want to associate with. You have to be void of all of that. You really have to be your own doctor. Home remedies, buy home remedy books. I've referenced numerous websites on the show before. In fact, let me bring it up again just so you can use it for your own references here. Give me just 1 second as I find this. Ailments from A to Z. It's earthclinic.com. Bookmark that website. Get on it, bounce around. It has everything for what ails you, essentially. And again, they stay away from pharmaceutical drugs as much as humanly possible. But they know what they're doing. It is a depopulation program. In fact, again, I was having this conversation with my chiropractor just yesterday. I said, well, first of all, he's unjabbed, completely awake, doesn't wear the mask, and he knows what's going on, and he loves to learn. And he always opens up the door, and then we immediately start talking about the jab-related stuff. And he said, "So what's on your radar these days regarding all of this nonsense?" And I said, I told him about Watch the Water. I said, "Have you seen Watch the Water?" He said, "No." He said, "Is that on YouTube?" I said, "No, it's on Rumble." He said, "Oh, great. That's awesome." I said, "Well, it's over a year old, the first one." I said, "But the second one just came out this last month, and you need to watch it." I said, "It's snake venom. It's synthesized snake venom inside of the shots. That's why it's attacking the central nervous system, and you see all of these ailments and all these variety of ailments. It's not just one particular ailment or one symptom. It's everything that the central nervous system controls." He completely agreed. He was like, "That makes total sense. Makes complete sense." And I said, "But you also have to understand that they're going to put all of this in all the other shots, including pharmaceutical pills that people take. Eventually, it'll get to that point." And he looks at me and he says, as he's leaning on my back, and he says, "The last pill I took was in 1972." He said, "That was the last pill I took." He said it was a pharmaceutical painkiller, and he said, and the doctor prescribed it for him because in case he was in pain. And he said, I'll take one or two, but I can handle the pain. I can deal with the pain." But he claims that he hasn't taken a pill ever since. He then looked at me and he goes, "So I'm 100% fine then. I'll be all right because I'm not swallowing this stuff." And I said, "Yeah, you're good. So am I, and so are a bunch of other people. But this is what they're going to do." And again, regarding transportation, yes, they need a catastrophic event. They need something to draw people's attention to that in order to, again, usher in the 15-minute city and to keep people from traveling. Because again, destroying commerce and business, transportation, all of it, buying and trading, selling, moving things around, they want all of that gone. The government wants to control all of it. It's not just the education system and the indoctrination brainwashing program. I mean, it's the entire apparatus. So I think it's only a matter of time before something like that happens. In fact, even Cicely tossed this my way, and she said that on CBS News, they were going to blame some incoming power outage as being, white supremacist right-wing extremists, that it's going to be their fault, that if we have a massive power outage of some kind, in particular one that lasts over the course of days or weeks, they're looking for any excuse they can to blame anybody they can. So, yeah, I could rant about it more, I suppose, but earthclinic.com. Get over there and check it out. And it's certainly worth it. Lots of resources there, lots of straight up advice and lots of good stuff. Let me see here. There, of course, is this. They're ushering it into food as well. Legalinsurrection.com, new FDA rule mandates prescriptions for antibiotics used for livestock. Adding to new challenges for ranchers and herders is a shortage of large animal veterinarians. What they're really doing is they're saying that it's illegal for you to treat your own animal, the same way that people who own John Deere tractors weren't allowed to fix their own tractors. It's the same with farm animals now. You're not allowed to treat your own cattle or your own livestock or whatever it is that you possess with your own methods. You have to bring in a veterinarian. They have to be jabbed. You have to have your livestock jabbed, so on and so forth. This is one of the things that they want. And they also, of course, are this, I believe it's next month, if I'm not mistaken, the elimination of over-the-counter antibiotics used in animal feed. And they have now been moved to the Veterinary Feed Directive, or the VFD. That, of course, includes ivermectin and the quote-unquote horse paste. So, yeah, certainly acquire some of that. You can use ivermectin, by the way, for your dogs as well. It's not just for livestock. You can use it for other animals too. You, of course, have to do it based on weight, and that matters because you don't want to pump them up with a whole tube of it. But you get what I'm saying. They're doing whatever they can to eliminate as many avenues as humanly possible for us to be free and free of government intervention. And I just don't see that stopping. Let's see. Here's another one. This is from Steve Kirsch. Shouldn't surprise anybody because he's pretty much Captain Obvious on a lot of things. Parents survey results that vaccines increase the risk of autism and autoimmune disorders, etc. It says, here's a first look at the results of my parent survey of 10,000 kids. It shows that the vaccines are pretty much a disaster. Birth defects were the control group. So let me get down to the summary. It says, quote, we've known for over 25 years that vaccines can trigger autism. Scientists have been denying it to protect their funding and their reputations. The reputations are now tarnished. This survey, combined with other evidence I've assembled, makes it you or your ghostwriters apparently, makes it crystal clear to anyone with a working brain that we've been gaslighted and lied to. Parents were right. Andrew Wakefield was right. And my next article will reveal just how corrupt the autism link deniers are. More in my next article on that and the major causes of death, blah, blah, blah. Again, not surprising. Here's another one, again, Captain Obvious Steve Kirsch. COVID vaccines have likely caused over 25,000 new cases of multiple sclerosis. No kidding. Now, what does multiple sclerosis attack? The nervous system. What are in the jabs? Snake venom. What does snake venom specifically attack? The nervous system. Again, it's Occam's razor. The answer lies in the explanation that requires the least amount of assumptions. And multiple sclerosis, it says here, based on, of course, the affected areas, vision, brain, spinal cord, mouth and speech, senses, digestive system, muscles, and the urinary system, all controlled by the central nervous system. It's a lengthy article, undeniable. It is undeniable. Now I'm going to end with this. This is audio from the late Dr. Buttar, Rashid Buttar, and he was giving this particular interview, recording himself talking, and he talks about the jabs, he talks about the poisoning, he talks about the 5G. This is 11 minutes long, and I'm going to end the episode with this. I have no doubt that he was poisoned. He even said that he had been poisoned on more than one occasion. He ended up, again, probably suffering from cardiac arrest, most likely as a result of course, the spike proteins and being poisoned by the people who wanted him dead. But again, he was one of the first ones out there saying that this is a bioweapon, this is depopulation, that's what this is. Right to the faces, again, of people who he was telling, who were questioning him and making fun of him, including that CNN anchor who's now dead, who he was interviewing. So, either way, give this a listen, ladies and gentlemen, from Dr. Buttar, and I will catch you on Friday.
Of a critical nature that we all need to be aware of. And this is similar to back in February of 2020. I feel like it's almost a deja vu because that's when I first started talking about this, and the rest ended up, unfortunately, I wish I'd been wrong, but most of it has transpired since then. And the question that I was always asked is, what do you think about this second wave that they're talking about? Do you think that there'll be a second wave? And I said, of course, there's going to be a second wave, but it's not going to be from the virus. It's going to be from the vaccine-induced injury, which will be compounded by the fear that they've created, which will be further compounded by the introduction of new technology, i.e. the 5G, which some people were saying is going to cause COVID. Of course, it's not going to cause COVID, but the science is clear that it causes a disruption in the voltage-gated calcium channels, causing a permeability to many different pathogens, especially enveloped viruses, of which coronavirus is one of those types, but for any type of pathogen. So this was what the concern was back then. And of course, we've seen that happened, and then the multiple waves that came out. Well, now there's something that is going to be taking place, and I've had multiple confirmations of this, and actually heard a video and talked to one of the parties that had put that video out. And to say the least, it's disturbing, but I'm going to go ahead and just read this to you. And some of you may have already heard about this. So essentially, what appears to be coming down the pipeline is that what has been introduced within the vaccines as we know them, the COVID vaccines, regardless of the type, they have introduced into individuals through these vaccines and the subsequent boosters other components. We have all heard of some of these components. There's talk about the nanotechnology. There's, of course, the spike protein. There are all these different things that have been found. There's been the graphene oxide, graphene hydroxide. There's been all sorts of different things that have been found within these vaccines, and still things that we haven't discovered. I know that about a year ago they found Roundup. Okay, that's glyphosate. That's a weed killer in the vaccines. Now, what is a Roundup, a weed killer, doing inside of vaccines? We don't understand that, but obviously there's all sorts of things that are being found that shouldn't be in the vaccines. But this portion that I'm going to talk about now is something that has been, I guess the right word would be, I had suspicions that they're introducing something into the vaccines that are designed to cause a detrimental effect at a time when they want the detrimental effect to take place. Meaning that it's almost like a sleeper cell within your own body. It's there. You don't know it's there. There's no effect from it, but then it can be called upon or triggered based upon any type of signal or chemical, or maybe two inert, relatively innocuous ingredients, but when they come together, they cause something to happen. And that would be the trigger, if you will, that would cause these sleeper cells within your body to awaken. Now, I've felt that for a long time. In fact, even before COVID, that there were things that were being introduced into our bodies that shouldn't be introduced into our bodies. But now we have confirmation of this, and I'm going to go specifically and talk to you about what is actually in there. So essentially, now from two different sources, we have confirmation, and I've talked to one of those sources myself, that there's something within the vaccines that is being considered as a bioweapon, which is, again, not a new term, but that this particular component within the vaccines, it's almost like a payload. Now, think of a payload. What does that mean? A payload. A payload is like when there's a detonation, you have a truck or a trailer, and it's got a bunch of dynamite or explosives on it. So they call it a payload. It's designed to deliver a massive eruption or detonation. So they call it a payload because it's not it wouldn't be like a normal onslaught. It would be like a massive onslaught. And so there's going to be a payload with some type of pathogen that will be activated by a sequence of 5G bursts. And these will be basically off of 16 to 18 gigahertz frequency, and it will be essentially 3 bursts that will be sequential and last a minute. And those will be designed, those bursts will actually create a signal that will release this payload that is within the hydrogel component of the vaccines. So what exactly is in there? There's supposed to be 3 pathogens, and these 3 pathogens are, I'm not 100% sure what these pathogens are, but one of them is what they call the Marburg virus, which is essentially a pathogen that mimics the hemorrhagic fever, that creates a hemorrhagic fever component. It's similar to that. And according to, if you look that up, it says that there's a 22% to up to a 90% mortality. And Google says it's an 88% mortality, meaning that out of every 100 people that get it, 88% or 88 out of 100 will die. Now, that's designed to justify once that release has taken place, once that signal from the 5G towers signals this release. Let me take that back. It's a sequence of 3 bursts that lasts a minute long, and it's using the 18 gigahertz frequency, or maybe it's the 16 gigahertz frequency. I don't know specifically yet which one, but it's between 16 and 18. It will cause the hydrogel to release this payload of a virus or viral load. And they are supposed to be 3 different types. I don't know all the 3 different types, as I mentioned, but Marburg is supposed to be one of those. When that happens, then everybody that's had the vaccine and these boosters will have this Marburg virus released. And again, we know that 22 to up to 90% mortality rate, but that's when somebody encounters it, in a natural way, if you will. Whether when it's inside your body, already introduced and now released within your body, it's probably going to be 100% mortality rate, meaning that everybody that has it, it's going to be triggered and it's going to be released. And when that happens, yes, obviously these people are going to die. And so we're talking, not hundreds of thousands. We're talking about millions and millions of people worldwide that are going to have this effect. But what's even more concerning than that, and what could be more concerning than that, guys, remember, everybody had a choice. Some people chose to take this, people ran for it, and I can't say that I'm disappointed, because when you've talked as much as I have about this issue and try to warn as many people as I've tried to warn, and they still do it, at a certain point you say, there's only so much I can do, and I'm not gonna sit here and have tears that are being shed because people were not smart enough to use their own brains and look at the science, and instead they just jumped in the bandwagon and believed the BS that was being fed to them. Because at that point, people have to be responsible for themselves, right? You reap the rewards and you pay the consequences of your actions. And so this is something that I've been, like I say, most of you know this, and many of you have been talking about this just as long as I've been talking about it, over 2 years at this point. And I can't feel sorry for those people. Now, of course, there may be some people that were forced to do it, but even then, the warnings were out there when people would say to me, oh, what am I supposed to do? I have to do this. It's my job. And if I don't do it, then I'm going to get fired. It's your life. You're telling me that having a job is more important than your life? So you're going to go ahead and do that job and then take the shot because you're saying, well, I'm being forced to do it and I got to do it for my job? My God, I'd rather, I've had people tell me, well, what am I supposed to do? I'd end up homeless. Well, guess what? At least you're alive. Homeless and alive versus the shot and being dead in the next 6 months to 2 years. I don't think there's much of a choice there. I think, how can you even say that, oh, well, they're forcing me to? What do you, unless they tied you down and put a gun to your head and said, take the shot or else I'm going to blow your head off. That's the only way you could say force. And I would say to blow my head off. I wouldn't take the vaccine. That's just me, though. The point that I'm making is I can't get upset or sad at this juncture anymore about the people that have had the vaccine. But here's what the real issue is. So, yes, millions of lives will be lost. And yes, it's disappointing. And yes, it's saddening. And yes, it is what it is. There's nothing that I can do to change that. And we've done everything that I could. And many of you have done the same thing. And many other doctors and researchers and scientists have tried to do the same thing. But what's the most concerning beyond that, because again, these people took that, they chose that, they took that option. The most egregious thing is that those massive numbers of death will then cause a sequence of events to start. And once these cells burst and release the Marburg epidemic, then the Centers for Disease Control and the World Health Organization will assume a control because there's massive amounts of death taking place. And that's where that massive danger lies, because if they can now justify, oh my God, there's massive hemorrhagic fever, and they're going to take it to the next level to scare more people, to force more people to get vaccinated, you're going to have all those people dying, and they're going to try to justify forcing individuals to get the vaccine. And that's where the real danger is. So I don't know when this is going to happen. I think it's going to be sometime this year. We're already approaching the second half of the second quarter. Now we're in another 15 days, we'll be in the second half of the second quarter. So as of July 1st, we'll be in the third quarter. So it's more than concerning, obviously.
Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.